All right. Hi. Good morning. My name is Kristina Tavarez, and I am presenting on how I enhanced learning with organizational methods for middle school students. So my essential question was how do poor organizational skills affect students and their learning? So my timeline was to go through my inspiration. So I'll touch on the inspiration for that. Then my mentor. Third, I'll discuss the beginning steps for starting a project involving the middle school. Then I will explain research topics, then the topics of my lessons, the pros and cons, and then the connection to the vision of a graduate. So my inspiration was me when I was younger. So it really does start when I'm young with my lifelong experiences connect me to conduct this project. My academic career has been marked by a struggle to focus and organize, and it led to a diminished confidence in my academic potential and ability to keep up with my peers. The midway point during quarter one of my junior year was the turning point for me when I was diagnosed with ADHD. And after receiving that diagnosis and getting in-school help to improve my executive functioning, I found purpose and I could share what I know. So on the right here, I have a picture of my mentor, Mrs. Raposa. As a part of her work, as a special education teacher, she introduces students to organizational interventions. So simply put, those are methods for organization. She's been one of my teachers for the past 2 years, so that was another reason why I chose her. So beginning steps are to draft the first lesson plan and apply the topics found in my early research. Next, I wanted to reach out to the middle school's English department and ask them if I could do a project with their students. I used the first lesson as a demonstration for what I wanted to do with the students to see if I had any positive or negative feedback from them and what I could change. And then in that same meeting, I wanted to schedule a lesson day, but that didn't necessarily happen on that day. We had to do some emails back and forth. But a struggle with that was aligning with the middle school schedule. So walking into the project, I believed that I would do it with each of the middle school grades, but then we had some chats and we realized that it would only be developmentally appropriate for 8th graders. And then below is the email that I sent out to the English department of the middle school where I wanted to conduct a project. Is that my next one? Yeah. For research, I researched the organizational deficits in children and in children and adolescents, and that refers to executive functioning. So that's like the neurocognitive process of planning and organizing. I wanted to get input from middle school teachers, which leads to my next research topic for report 2 on how they handle their classrooms. For the third research report, I wanted to look into Montessori education and how that promotes creativity. And my findings show that it's a creative avenue, so it plays a huge role in somebody's executive functioning to be able to use their creativity in how they organize. For report 4, I researched the steps of habit building and the best ways to remain consistent during that process. And then lastly, I wanted to research how stress can become how it can segue into procrastination. For my lessons, I had 3 of them. The first one was how to agenda. And in that one, we learned about the concept of a working list and how to designate priorities. A working list is usually it has like 3 tiers. There's high priority, mid priority, and low priority. But sometimes you can have something like an urgent tier, and that would be for something like a senior project. Students learned about designating priorities, such as how to manage schoolwork when time and availability just seems like it's at an all-time low. In lesson 2, I got the students on their computers to use a web-based platform called Notion, which you can see in my photo right there. And it's a tool you can use to make a website for yourself. So this is the model that I demonstrated to them. I walked them through how I made everything and also how I use it in my day-to-day and extracurricular tasks. Lesson 3 was less of instruction and more of guided time to get them used to the program, since I ran out of time in the second lesson. In the senior project showcase, I was in the classroom, so I walked through everything that I did in the first 2 lessons. I showed the 3 different groups how to make a Notion platform, how to do a similar thing on Google Sheets, and also how to pick an agenda. Outside of the classroom, I spent many hours researching and brainstorming how to implement organization into the lives of students without causing a huge disruption in the time that they have. And it was a little bit difficult to accept that not everybody finds organization as necessary as I do, but that led into me, I don't know how to put this. It led to me being able to find a solution for them. With that in mind, I visited Staples and I found examples of planners, and I got a few photos, but I thought that this one would be best, as this is one of the planners that I absolutely despise. It is because you have all of these different timestamps here and you section out your day in half-hour periods. And I looked at that and I was like, who does that? Certainly not me. So I wanted to show the students that. So for pros, I have that I had smooth communication with the teachers about scheduling. I believe I had a total of 45 back and forth emails with them. Did the math in my head. Next was preparation of the lessons. It was not difficult. Finding content was sometimes a challenge, but other than that, I went pretty well with it. And then engaging with the students was natural. In the first lesson, it was a bit stale. However, they did get into it very quickly. And then for some cons, nerves led to procrastination in sending out the first email, and I do wish that I had done that earlier. I spent a lot more time on the aesthetics of the project than I did on bridging the language barrier between a high school senior and 8th grade students. And then unaccounted discrepancies in regards to scheduling, like scheduling changes from when I was in the 8th grade, called for a complete redesign of the blueprint. For example, they don't have a win period anymore, like they did when I was an 8th grader. So at first I was thinking we could use that and do it during those periods, but then I had to change my ideas and schedule around my classes because that entire concept had been eliminated. For results, I have a Google Classroom and a theme that can live on in middle school classes. The Google Classroom was made with Mrs. Raposa's email, so it can remain in operation after graduation. And the 8th grade class of 2030 gets to experience taking away being in the classroom and learning firsthand from someone who is closer to their age than a teacher is and someone who experienced the same struggles. For vision of a graduate, so it aligns with all of it, but specifically in the fact of, I believe it is collaboration. Yes. It inspires others to move towards a common vision, but it does align with the other 4 C's. So it connects to communication through self-advocacy. I did have to do a lot of that, which I was not a fan of. And it connects to critical thinking through the assessment of credibility, reliability, and bias of sources. So I had to make sure that all of my lesson plan information was perfect with that. It connects to character through empathetic and compassionate interactions with the students. A challenge in the middle school was students being disruptive in classes. So I had to persevere through that obstacle. And then students were inspired by the model elements. So were the high school and middle school teachers by my story. And then overall, the teachers and the students were both motivated to move towards a better organized student body in the future. I would like to say my thank yous to Mrs. Raposa for being my mentor, Mrs. Bartley for being an available resource, and Mrs. Monahan for for donating her valuable curriculum time to my project's greater goal. And I want to thank all of my students that I had, even though they're not here, but also one student in particular. I had a kid named Kenny, and he was a character, but he was also the comedic relief in the classroom, and he did do a great job of breaking up everything when there was a lot of loaded information. So I have a question slide, but just my works cited there. And any questions?